Welcome to an explainer on what I think is a truly profound revolution in global risk analysis. See, the future of war, peace, and power, it's not just something we talk about anymore. It's something that's being actively priced second by second.
For generations, we've had to rely on these vague expert assessments, right? Phrases like a low probability of war. But we are witnessing a fundamental shift away from these ambiguous stories to the cold, unforgiving language of mathematical pricing, from a phrase to a number.
Okay, so let's dive right in. For decades, the entire world pretty much ran on expert reports and intelligence briefings. But now, a new, far more direct mechanism is starting to take over: prediction markets. You could say this is the dawn of information finance.
And right at the center of this storm is Polymarket. This is a decentralized platform that's leveraging hundreds of millions of dollars to put a very real, very immediate price on the future. Honestly, it's evolving from what people thought was just a betting site into something much more: a prophecy machine for global macro risk.
The core logic here is deceptively simple, and it all goes back to this idea of the wisdom of crowds. By forcing participants to put real money behind their predictions, the system just extracts the best aggregated information out there. See, you don't just state an opinion anymore, you have to bet on it.
So how exactly does Polymarket take these incredibly complex global events and just boil them down into a single tradable number? Well, let's look under the hood.
Okay, so at the very heart of the platform is something called the binary option. And really, it's the simplest financial contract you can possibly imagine. It's just a yes or no question, where the outcome is either 1 or 0, win or lose. Simple as that.
The whole process is incredibly clean. First, a really clear question is posed. Something like, will the U.S. conduct an airstrike on Iran by January 31st, 2026? Then, participants trade yes and no shares. And once the outcome is known, the winning shares pay out $1 apiece. The losing shares, they're worth 0.
And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. Price equals probability. A share price isn't just some arbitrary number. If a yes share is trading at, say, 72 cents, the market is signaling that it believes there is a 72% chance of that event happening. It's a direct, real-time probability forecast. Now, you might assume, and it's a logical assumption, that more money flowing into the market leads to more accurate predictions. But the data reveals something far more complex, and frankly, a lot more fascinating.
So this table really illustrates that paradox perfectly. A Vanderbilt study found that Predictit, which is a regulated platform with an $850 cap per trader, was actually significantly more accurate than the no-limit Wild West of Polymarket. And you have to ask, why? Well, it's because on Polymarket, these huge traders, people we call whales, can single-handedly distort prices, totally undermining the wisdom of the crowd.
You see, this is so much more than just a simple betting pool. It's a really complex ecosystem. You've got the whales we just talked about who can move entire markets. Then there are the nothing-ever-happens traders who basically profit from betting against panic. You have news scalpers who trade on breaking headlines, and even copy traders who just mimic successful wallets. All of them, together, competing, they create this surprisingly efficient, information-driven battlefield.
Okay, now let's turn to what is probably Polymarket's most impactful and certainly its most controversial application: the real-time pricing of war and peace.
So, if you look at the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, the market price for a ceasefire happening in 2026 has consistently hovered at around 25 cents. And what that implies is a starkly pessimistic, yet, you have to admit, brutally clear 25% probability of peace in the near term.
And this creates a profound ethical crisis. I mean, think about it. To settle these bets on war, Polymarket has to rely on data from sources like deepstatemap.live. That's a map that civilians on the ground use for evacuations. So all of a sudden, you have speculators with a direct financial stake in the outcome of humanitarian tools. It's raised huge concerns about manipulation. This whole securitization of suffering even led the Ukrainian government to block the platform entirely.
But then you have to look at its incredible power as a leading indicator. Take the 2026 Iran crisis, for example. Polymarket was so far ahead of traditional intelligence. While the mainstream media was still busy discussing diplomacy, the market had already priced in a 71% chance of a U.S. airstrike. And that was a full 48 hours before any official announcements were made, and well ahead of the oil markets.
So what does that mean?
It means traders who were watching Polymarket instead of the news were able to front-run the entire market. They could buy up energy stocks just before they rallied. This ability to generate profit from prediction market signals, it's a completely new kind of advantage, and it's being called geopolitical alpha.
All right, so for our final section, let's examine how this new order is being integrated right into the heart of global finance, and at the same time, how it's confronting its own potentially fatal flaws.
Look, this is no longer some niche crypto experiment tucked away in a corner of the internet. We're talking about Polymarket data now being available on Bloomberg terminals. The parent company of the New York Stock Exchange, ICE, is a major strategic investor. The message could not be clearer. Geopolitical risk is officially a tradable asset class.
But here is the central tension, right? For a system that's built on pricing objective truth, its greatest vulnerability lies in a very subjective question: who ultimately gets to define that truth?
And this question brings us to three really existential threats. First, you have Oracle failure. This is where the centralized group of token holders who are supposed to report the truth can actually vote to override facts. Second, there's the constant regulatory crackdown, a never-ending battle with agencies like the CFTC. And finally, the darkest timeline, the potential for morally reprehensible things like assassination markets.
So when you boil it all down, what Polymarket represents is a kind of mirror world for information. It's a reflection of our reality, yeah, but it's one that's filtered not through opinion, but through the absolutely unforgiving logic of capital. It's more sensitive, it's more ruthless, and perhaps, just perhaps, it's closer to the truth.
And this really illustrates the new reality we're in. Pandora's box is wide open. Geopolitical risk is no longer some distant threat that you analyze in a quarterly report. No, it is a live, tradable asset with a price that ticks every single second of every day. We may not be able to prevent the future chaos, but now, for the first time, we have the ability to price it.